Well, the fallout is still happening from the unsettlement.
Unsettlement. Great games, by the way.
Which is why this
Fallout.
audio we're about to play is rather interesting because it's from April the 26th.
Oh,
which is before the unsettlement, which was approved a couple of weeks ago.
Also, it was before May.
And it was before May.
I was still 26 back then.
But
the young spry boy.
Nebraska held an event, an 1890 appreciation event.
Oh,
where this was the night to
appreciate.
It's the night for the donors. Night for the donors. You get some prominent folks to speak. And this piece of audio we're going to share is an excerpt from Troy Dannen's address to the group. And again, this is from April the 26th. So keep that in mind as you are listening. We're also going to provide you the text version if you're watching it on the stream.
Oh, nice.
You'll also be able to read along with the and courtesy of Huskers Game Day, who alerted us to this audio being present. The Twitter account at Huskers Game Day. But here's Troy Dannen speaking to the 1890 initiative folks last April, about 5 weeks ago.
Here's what I think is going to happen, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. There will be an antitrust settlement this year in the courts. As a part of that antitrust settlement, 1890 is going to get banned. The collectives are going to go away. And what's going to be replaced is athletic departments revenue sharing with our athletes. In the budget of the athletic department right now, we have a $20 million placeholder in 2 years to share money with our athletes. It's in the budget right now. There's 3 schools in the country, I think, that have that in their budget right now, Georgia, Texas, and us. We've got great advantages here. We don't have debt. We have great reserves. We have a fan base. Our facilities, we have great advantages to dealing and addressing what lies ahead. Well, let's talk about what happens in the next 2 years. NIL is not coming in-house. It's going to be replaced by something else. At Washington, our football program last year had an NIL budget of about $10 million and went to the national championship game. Oregon's was 23. Ohio State's is 23. Ours here is not even 10. We're doing it in a lot of respect because we have the facility, we have the coaches, we have the fans. In the next couple of years, we'll be fighting an even fight when it all comes in. Right now, we're not fighting an even fight. If you ask the coaches, and I've asked the coaches, what do you need from me to be most successful? And it is to support the initiatives to get athletes to Lincoln. NIL is a huge part of that. I cannot understate what a huge part of it is.
So that was an excerpt from that speech. During that speech, Josh pulled up the YouTube where this audio came from.
Yeah.
The video has been taken down.
Yeah, understandably so, right? I'm surprised that it was ever posted in the first place.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here.
Sure.
So let's go back to the beginning because that certainly is rather interesting. And again, remember, this was said on April the 26th. The unsettlement just happened a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the public rumors about it also happened between this speech and today.
Yeah.
So we really didn't have a lot of the details about what was being talked about here when this speech was given. But what he said was, here's what I think is going to happen, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. There's going to be an antitrust settlement in the courts. Part of that antitrust settlement, 1890, will go away.
And what's going to replace is athletic department revenue share?
I have never gotten the impression so far that NIL is going anywhere. Yes, there will be revenue sharing, but I never gotten the impression, reading all the stuff I've read, hearing all the things I've heard, that NIL is disappearing in any form or fashion.
Yeah, my read on the entire situation has been that it will be that athletic departments will no longer have to ask their fans to chip in the way in which they are right now, but that they will still be involved because, you still want extra money coming in, and it's the lifeblood of the program. But I have not gotten he is essentially saying it's going to be made illegal, right? Like, that's what he is saying here.
Let's go back.
There's going to be antitrust settlement this year in the courts. Part of that antitrust settlement, 1890, will go away. Like, I guess I hear that as we wouldn't be allowed to do it anymore. That's what I hear when he says that.
Speaking of the cat or the secret being out of the bag, this ship has sailed, folks. Yes, what we know right now as NIL is, as we've said many times, all the dirty money for years that has now come above the table, above the surface. That's not going anywhere. The difference, though, between the $20 million that's now in the Nebraska budget, the revenue share, and NIL is, with NIL, they can dole it out to whomever they want, whenever they want. They meaning the collectives. There's no restrictions on that. If you want to pay a quarterback $4 million, you can. If you want to pay a point guard $1.2 million, you can. With revenue share, with this $20 million, and we still don't know exactly how it's going to be doled out. One of the theories is, well, it'll go to the revenue sports because they're the ones bringing in the revenue. Most of it will go to the football team. Most of it will go to the men's basketball team. And whatever's left will get spread out. It'll get spread out somewhat proportionally. That's one theory. There's another theory that says, nope, everyone's going to get the same because we're not sure what Title IX is going to say. There's a lot of different opinions on where that $20 million is going to go. That's a huge difference between the $20 million revenue share that Dannen's talking about that's already in the budget and NIL. NIL, though, I don't think is going anywhere.
So let me read a few responses that we have gotten and then a message that I received from somebody who I will describe as someone who is pretty plugged in with the NIL scene. All right, so first of all, some listener stuff. Amazing Daniel. NIL going away doesn't make any sense. Much like pro athletes can still have endorsements, I don't see how they could legally stop endorsements. I have felt that way too.
Right.
Now, can they try to legislate a requirement where you have to actually do something quid pro quo? And like, I've always laughed like when people say that over the last couple of years, because they are doing something. It's just not what we thought. They're playing the sport, and that is the quid with the pro quo or whatever way it goes. Zach says something similar. NIL will be in addition to school revenue sharing. So he is basically saying, I also will disagree. So the message that I received from somebody says there is no antitrust settlement coming. Collectives aren't going away anytime soon. There is no scenario where Dannen is right. His statements have so many inaccuracies.
Now, again, remember, this was said on April the 26th.
Dannen.
After this was when we started getting more details of what the settlement might be. And those are the facts or the suppositions that we're working on right now. So, yeah, it's very curious because, again, there's nowhere that I see that NIL is going anywhere. Again, the cat's out of the bag. And also the idea of restricting anything. The only way you're going to be able to do that is if you get the antitrust exemption. There is no movement whatsoever in Congress about the antitrust exemption that college sports so desperately wants. There is no movement on that. There is no interest in that right now.
So let me throw this at you, John, and I'll read another comment from Max. Maybe the collectives go away. That's the only thing I can think of.
But why would the collectives go away?
All right, so let me ask you this then. I guess I just don't agree with this premise because I want to let's pretend that the premise is true. Then everything just goes back under the table again.
Precisely.
Like I'm guessing.
Yeah, if you think that money is just going to disappear, whether it's legal or not, it's going to still be out there.
And maybe it's not as large, right?
Think about it this way, Josh. Think about prohibition. Okay.
Exactly.
Before prohibition, of course, alcohol was legal.
Yeah.
Then prohibition came along. All it was a lawless, speakeasies and everything that took place. They realized we can't do this. We can't regulate this.
Yeah.
And it was repealed.
Yeah, you could see
is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
It had been happening for decades, albeit it was always illegal. Then it gets brought to the surface. You can't put that back. You can't put that toothpaste back in the tube.
It's
not going to happen. Also,
secret get in the bag.
Also, there is a logistical argument here about the true meaning of NIL, name, image, and likeness, that exists. Why shouldn't? One of the reasons why so many of us thought that this was a good idea was because of the kids who were making money from YouTube videos, or people who wanted to run their own sports camps, or people who wanted to endorse things because it made sense. People who wanted to be able to sell the uniforms with their number and name on it.
Video game.
And the video game. All of this stuff. That's not going. That certainly is not going.
So is
anywhere.
So maybe we should not infer NIL is going away, but 1890 is so the collectives are going away.
But even that, I don't think is true.
I don't either.
I can't possibly imagine everyone saying, "Yep, we're done now."
Well, could you see it?
We've won this battle. Of course not.
Could you see it branching off to where NIL goes back to what we originally thought NIL was supposed to be publicly, and then the collectives kind of go underground?
Well, I mean, is the idea with the collectives disappearing okay, if we acknowledge that the collective's main thing is to literally pay the athletes to play the sport, that going in-house does lessen the need for them in terms of doing that. So do they become more of
to a degree? But again, we don't know how that $20 million is going to be divvied up.
Yeah.
Let's just say, for argument's sake, a Ryan Kalkbrenner is making, we'll just say $400,000.
Okay.
From NIL, from the Bird Club.
Okay.
And now that money goes in-house, and now
Creighton is paying him $400,000. Or are you saying you don't think they can get to $400,000?
I don't think they are.
So then, if you want to make up the difference, you need the Bird Club to do so.
Because again, the Bird Club is taking care of some of the athletes. They're not taking care of every single athlete on campus, and we don't know yet how that $20 million can legally be divvied up. Because all it's going to take is one or groups of schools to say, "Yeah, we're just going to give this all to the football players." And a lawsuit is coming, or it's not divvied up in somewhere out there. There's going to be litigation because there's no antitrust, and there's no motivation for that antitrust happening right now.
So I wonder why he said this then, and where he is hearing that from, and then why the video is suddenly gone.
Well,
very interesting. All of this stuff is very interesting.
The other part of it that folks really glommed onto was quoting the budget numbers, the NIL numbers from other schools, like at Washington. Of course, Dannen would know this for a fact because he was at Washington.
Dannen.
They had a budget at Washington of $10 million. He says Oregon's was 23 and Ohio State's was 23, and ours here at Nebraska, not even 10 million.
Yeah, first of all, those are some numbers that, I will definitely take him at his word at face value for the first and the last one that he mentioned. Washington was his school. Nebraska is now his school. What's the purpose to lie there? Do we take him at face value for Oregon being 23 and Ohio State being 23? I remember Ryan Day, John, and I could probably find the story real fast, but Ryan Day talked about their collective and the need for, I believe it was like $12 million. And this was a couple of years ago, maybe. I think. And so that is a much smaller number than 23. Oh, here it is. June 2nd, 2022. Ryan Day says Ohio State needs $13 million in NIL money to keep roster intact. Now, so that's from Bill Landis of The Athletic. Mm-hmm. That is to keep the roster intact. That is different than what you need money for elsewhere. And that is bringing in transfers and bringing in recruits. But 13 million is a much smaller number than 23.
Yeah.
Much smaller number. And if that's true that Nebraska's is that much smaller, wow, that's a lot less money, man.
That Nebraska's is smaller than Washington. And I get it. Washington's been more successful.
Sure.
And I know Washington's a more populated state, but it's also a pro sports state.
Sure. Yeah, they have other teams to glom onto.
There's other things that are
That's
out
the word
there.
Of the day.
Glom. If you ask the coaches, what do you need from me to be most successful? It's to support the initiative to get athletes to Lincoln. So obviously, that's why That's why there is a part of me that still looks at those numbers and I say, is that all the way there? Because he is trying to get some people to donate. On the other hand, to lie to a group of donors would be a pretty tough thing for a brand new athletic director. So that's why I take him at his word.
Max says,
why I glom onto his word, Nick.
Max says in the YouTube comments, endorsements will always be a thing. So I'm just pondering that collectives might become against the rules. So the money for collectives will now either be bagmen or amigos.
Amigos as in friends?
No, amigos as in like, businesses like amigos.
Mm.
Here's
just Sims meal.
Who is making the rules against the collectives?
Who watches
Who
the
would
Watchmen?
be making the rules to ban collectives?
Great question.
Who collects the collectmen?
It would have to be the NCAA, correct?
I really want to know.
It would have to be.
Yeah, probably.
But the NCAA, as we know, has no power anymore.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones trying to avoid going to court. That's why we're doing the unsettlement to try to avoid going to court.
This is all very much War of Five Kingsy to me.
Oh.
I've been rewatching Thrones.
Game of Thrones, yeah. Amazing Daniel says, this might shock you, but for a few reasons, I'm not in on Dannen so far. Not all the way out.
Not in.
But there are a couple of yellow to orange flags. I have concerns. When he first got hired, I opined on this very show that I thought that there would be people that would not dig his style. Because remember, I went back and listened to that podcast interview that he had done with some magazine or whatever, or store.
Yeah, it was with what was the name of the store franchise?
Yeah,
anyway, yeah.
Name some big stores, Nick. It was with one of those.
Walmart.
We played some of them.
Yeah. No, a nice store, like where people go to buy clothes.
Hollister.
No. Anyway, I remember listening to that, and I'm
J.C. Penney.
I don't know if people are going to like this guy because of how just the vibe that he brings about. Now, I think his openness and honesty, I think is pretty interesting. Max says, agree completely with Amazing Daniel.
Well,
I'm still iffy.
Keep in mind, this is
Mm.
being discussed at 1890.
Sure.
I mean, think about it. What you got was a glimpse into what
this is what happens
booster events are like.
Yeah.
Because most of us aren't invited to booster events.
Nordstrom, the Nordy Pod. Yeah, exactly, John. This is what happens behind the scenes.
And usually, yeah, we got a little bit of a peek behind the curtain.
Yep.
Now, certainly it was quasi-public, but it was invite only. It's not like media was necessarily there. And if they were, they weren't there to report on it.
I didn't even know this.
Which is why it was interesting why the video, I believe, was put out by the official 1890.
Oh,
who's in trouble now for that?
Video or YouTube account, I think. I'm pretty sure it was.
Oopsies. Yeah, I'm trying to.
Do you think that could be intentional though? Because maybe collectives are scared that they're going to become insignificant, so they're leaking these videos to try to get the conversation started.
So now this link, like I said, it's now private, so I can't see it anymore. But the thumbnail from the YouTube says Troy Dannen on Nebraska NIL. This is how great. And then it cuts off. But it says, tune in as we recap speeches from the 1890 annual member appreciation event starting off with. So that, I think John might be right, that it's a, tune in and check this thing out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was from the official 1890 YouTube channel.
Yeah, interesting.
So.
Interesting. Matt DiMarina says, I hate when the cat gets in the bag and gets toothpaste everywhere.
Yeah, well, that happens.
Secret, sometimes. Get out of the bag.
Damn it, Secret.
I hate you, Secret.
You think Secret uses Secret?
Joe in Vegas says, with this new idiot athletic director Nebraska has, we're one football coach away from leaving to never get in the program turned around. From never getting the program.
One
football
around.
Coach away from leaving to never get the program turned around. I see. Doesn't seem very optimistic.
I'm gonna
negative boys.
Dannen.
I'm going to withhold going ultra hard in the paint against Troy Dannen for the moment, because again, this was 5 weeks ago and things have changed. Some of the things that he talked about did become public.
We had air back then.
We did have air conditioning back then. That said, I do disagree with the initial premise. And that is that NIL isn't going to disappear.
Yeah.
It's already here. It's not going anywhere.
It's already here.
Outside of the United States Congress passing a law that says they can't exist and that's not happening anytime soon, they're not going anywhere.
Brad emails in, Mr. Yogurt said OSU's NIL was $23 million. Day said he needed $13 million to keep his roster intact. If Day needed $13 million to keep intact, and that doesn't include transfers and recruits, Mr. Yogurt might be right, since NIL includes all sports. Well, going back to that quote from that part, was that the AD? No, it said that was just the football NIL budget, according to Dannen. He said that their football budget was 23, not the athletic department NIL budget, football budget. Interesting.
Well, we'll see if anything else falls out from this.